Good evening, everybody. My name is Dave Good. I'm the Constituent Services Administrator for Chesterfield County. Before we get the meeting officially underway, I'd just like to go over a little bit of housekeeping related to the format of tonight's meeting. Of course, we're welcoming people to come in person here in the public meeting room. We're also hosting this meeting virtually through Facebook Live. Just want to mention, after we have a presentation tonight, we're going to open it up for Q&A, and I would ask that anybody who is here in person, please step to the same mic that I'm at right now. That way everybody who's tuning in from home and also everybody in this room can hear clearly your comments and your questions, which these fine gentlemen up front will certainly do their best to answer. This meeting is also being live streamed on the county's YouTube channel, as well as on Chesterfield County Television on Verizon Channel 98 and Comcast Channel 98 and Verizon Channel 28. In the back of the room by the main entrance, there are some sign-in sheets. We would appreciate anybody providing their name and contact information. A simple email will do. It is optional, but if you provide us that, we can stay in touch with you and make sure that you receive future information about these types of meetings and many other things. But without that, I'm going to introduce our host tonight. That is the Honorable Jim Ingle, who of course is our supervisor for the Bermuda Magisterial District. Mr. Ingle.
Thank you, Dave, and good evening. I'm pleased to be your host for this third of 5 budget town hall meetings occurring through March 22nd. Tonight's meeting is one way in which citizens may provide input and ask questions about the proposed FY23 budget, while providing us board members an opportunity to engage with you on the plan. As Dave mentioned a moment ago, in addition to those who have joined us here in person, we have a virtual audience as well. No matter how you are participating, I appreciate your time and thank you for joining us. With me tonight are Dr. Joe Casey, our County Administrator, and Matt Harris, our Deputy County Administrator for Finance and Administration. In a moment, Mr. Harris is going to run through a brief presentation on the budget, and then we'll work to answer your questions. Tonight's meeting is only one of the ways to engage with Chesterfield on the proposed budget. I and my fellow board members are scheduled to hold a public hearing on March 23rd and prior to adopting a balanced budget in April. At any time, you may visit the special website we've devoted to the county's budget process at blueprint.chesterfield.gov, where you're also able to submit your questions and comments. This year's proposed budget represents Chesterfield's efforts to balance goals with significant measures to reduce higher tax bills for citizens, resulting in an incredibly robust housing market that has driven up assessments. Supply and demand challenges have also increased vehicle values in a similar manner. We understand the impact rising home and vehicle values, coupled with inflation, are having on households, and we've taken significant steps to lessen the impact on tax bills while remaining focused on the outstanding programs and services Chesterfield residents have come to expect. Chesterfield remains committed to its long-term goals, and tonight, prior to taking questions, you're going to hear about historic investments in schools, what we're doing to recruit and retain the best employees to serve our citizens, a $540 million bond referendum planned for this fall, and the broadest tax rate relief package Chesterfield has ever offered. Before I turn the mic over to Mr. Harris, I want to recognize Ms. Ann Coker, the Bermuda District Representative in the Chesterfield County Board of Supervisors Chesterfield County School Board Chair. And schools, of course, are a huge importance in terms of how we invest in the community, and we appreciate Ms. Coker's time this evening. Again, I thank everyone for joining us for this discussion, and I encourage you to remain engaged as Chesterfield continues to navigate the annual budget process. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being here. As Mr. Ingle says, my name is Matt Harris. I'm a Deputy County Administrator over the finance functions. I'm going to walk you through a brief presentation tonight. I'm not going to get into deep into the details. We've been discussing this budget in this room with the Board of Supervisors really since November, December timeframe. We did in-depth work sessions in February, and most recently on March 9th, as Mr. Ingle mentioned, the public hearing is the 23rd, and then we adopt this budget on April 6th. So the timing of these community meetings is really good because it's an open process, and really truly what's happened, the county administrator sitting to my far left has presented this budget to the board, and they are receiving it along with all of your feedback and commentary. So, don't perceive this as a final project. Mr. Ingle and the rest of the board members are before you to receive those comments and then fold that in, and then we bring all those changes before them on April 6th. That being said, there's really three main legs to this FY23 stool, and just as I always say in these meetings, our budget process, our budget year begins on July the 1st. So when we talk about FY23, we have a 6-month head start on the calendar year. So we are getting prepared for our new fiscal year beginning July 1. But the three main themes here, and I think this one cuts on both sides, county and schools, employee recruitment and retention. I think we all recognize, whether you're just an employee, you own your own business, or just follow along in the news, the pressure to find and hold on to talented workers is really at an all-time high. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, and local government is no different from that. And we'll talk about some specific examples, but this budget is really, on the county and school sides, very light on new initiatives, new programs, new bodies. It's really intended first and foremost to be able to take care of and retain the talented workforce that we already have that provide the programs and services every day that make Chesterfield part of the special place that it is. Secondly, the referendum you see on the screen of $540 million, that's the bricks and mortar part of it. So if you think of the first piece I just talked about as kind of the people part of our business, making sure that we can retain them, we also have to be attentive to the facilities that it requires to provide all the programs and services in Chesterfield County. Referendum is nothing more than a ballot initiative. It's scheduled to be on the ballot this November. You vote on it just like you would a candidate for office. And in total, we are proposing a $540 million referendum. That's inclusive, again, of county and school projects. We'll talk about a little breakdown of that. But that's the largest referendum in the county's history, and it's vital to make sure we can continue to serve the new and emerging areas of the county and also provide facility parity in some of the older areas of the county. And lastly, there's a lot of, I don't know what it is about late February and early March, but there's always something that emerges during budget process that makes it a bit of a challenging backdrop to produce a budget, to propose a budget, and then certainly for all of you to sort of sit down at your kitchen tables and figure out how you're going to balance your own household budgets. This year we've got inflation reaching all-time highs, at least in sort of modern history. We've got geopolitical unrest spanning across the globe, and so we are cognizant of all of those items as well as the housing market that, across the nation, it doesn't matter what city or state you look at, the housing market has been, incredibly strong. And so we are recognizing all of those factors in this proposed budget here tonight. And as Mr. Ingle said, there's a broad and diverse package of tax relief that recognizes there's things we need to do for the organization on the county and school side, but we also have to be cognizant of, our customers, the taxpayers that fund all of the programs and services that we offer. So let's start with that, and I think as you'll see in this slide, it's it looks like a bit of an eye chart, but there's a number of ways that we get revenue as a local government, and that's defined for us. We don't necessarily get to pick what that is. But home prices and vehicle prices are really the two main drivers for how much revenue we have on an annual basis. The housing market's pretty clear cut. I think everybody either has sold a house, knows someone who sold a house, had a neighbor who sold a house, and you've seen the interest that has come along with that, the number of showings, how quickly those go. And so home prices in Chesterfield County had a very strong year, as they did throughout the region. Again, we don't set those prices. We respond to the market conditions that are out there. But in response to the housing market, the board is considering a real property rate reduction, which is our number one revenue driver, of 3 cents to 92 cents. That's the largest cut in the tax rate itself since 2007. That being said, in full disclosure, we're not standing up here, and Mr. Ingle certainly was clear in his commentary, tax bills are still going up. This is about, moderating those increases in the real estate bill so that we keep those increases in something that's, what we feel is sustainable on the long term, not recognizing all of the growth that has occurred. Overall, that 3 cent reduction is about a $15 million of overall tax relief for the upcoming year. I will skip down to the third one because that's the second biggest part of this. Vehicle values, it's a bit of a topsy-turvy world. I think from the supply chain issues that I think none of us have ever said supply chain as many times as we have in the last 6 months, and we've had to learn exactly what that is. But that caused incredible pressure on car prices. Couldn't get new cars. It forces people in the used car market, drives up those prices. So we are reflective of that. We use a national database to set our values on cars. Again, we don't determine that. We just pass that along, but the board does multiply it times a rate and a relief percentage that goes all the way back to the Jim Gilmore administration back in the late 90s. Bottom line is they're going to raise the relief percentage on your bill. So whatever your bill turns out to be from that national database, it's going to be relieved in this past year from 46% up to 55%. That's another $15 million of tax relief. Elderly and disabled, we have to really be mindful of those that are on a fixed income. The board back in December increased all of those tables by 6% to really keep up with the Social Security increases so that they're not penalized for additional income that comes through that program. The B-poll tax relief, this is really aimed at small business, so we raised the threshold. So you pay a business tax, essentially, if your gross receipts exceed a certain threshold. The board controls what that threshold is. They've raised it from $300,000 to $400,000, meaning that anybody over that pays on the rate schedule. If you're less than that, you just pay a flat fee. With this increase here to $400,000, now we have 2/3 of small businesses, of overall businesses, but predominantly small businesses, that don't pay a B-poll tax. So really being mindful of our small businesses. And then lastly, the vehicle registration fee was increased. That's a component of your property tax bill. That was increased from $20 to $40 a number of years ago to fund roads. Since then, we've had other methods that have been made available to us. And so as we have done over time, we are giving that back, going from the 40 back to the 20. That's, as you see, a 1.5 cent equivalency on the real estate rate, about $7.5, $8 million of relief. All in, if you total all that stuff on the slide, it's $52 million of relief. And it doesn't come in any one particular bullet. We really made sure that we could, give relief in a variety of areas. So if you're a small business owner, if you're a senior citizen, if you rent an apartment, if you own a home, whatever the case might be, there's something in here that will, hit everyone's bottom line and try to moderate those increases. I'll touch on this, run through it real quick. This is our history, our modern history of the real estate rate, and you see the downward trajectory over time. We're a growing community. People want to come here. Home values have gone up. And so we have been able over time consistently, regardless of the board, regardless of the county administrator even, have been able to reduce this rate. That's just part of our DNA to, again, find that balance. And so another 2 cent reduction, the largest one since 2007. Personal property tax relief, again, we talked about this. You see those relief percentages. The way that's set up, just real quickly, when it started, the program started in the late 90s, it was aimed to be about 100% of car tax relief. The state has not put any additional funds into that, meaning the relief percentage dwindles over time. This is the first time we have raised that percentage, and I'm not aware of anybody else actually in the state that has taken this measure, but that's another $15 million of relief. And you see also there on a much smaller note, but those folks that are on a fixed income or maybe a lower income household, if you have a vehicle that's $1,500 or less, that tax bill doesn't even show up. So we've raised that minimum threshold as well as part of this. So what is the overall budget made up of? And we say general fund, that's just our term for the overall county budget, which includes a portion of the school budget. The rest of the school budget comes directly from the governor and friends, but we fund a portion of that. So this shows how does our overall, the budget we're talking about tonight, how is it invested overall? And this is, I think, a nice chart that just kind of does that in a spatial manner. And you can see schools consistently over a number of years has been right in that 40 to 41% range. Our next biggest block there and sort of the gold color, public safety, and then the navy blue at 9.2 and capital or infrastructure. And again, that's the physical plant, that's the infrastructure, the facilities that it takes to run the organization. So all in all, 75 cents more or less out of every dollar goes into schools, public safety, and infrastructure. Those are the building blocks of local government, or at least they should be. We take that seriously, and that's where we, that's every budget is built around those priorities. We're able to put so much money in those areas because you see sort of that mustardy color, the general government block at 6 cents on every dollar. That's IT, legal, finance, purchasing, all the other stuff, all the support stuff behind the scenes, we're able to do at a very low cost to make sure we can put more and more money in the frontline areas. So where is this budget growing? Same kind of concept, but the last one's looking at sort of total dollars. This is looking at increased dollars. Again, that gold color, investing in the workforce, and we'll talk more details about that in a second. That's the predominant theme here on the county and the school side. The blue bar, infrastructure and facilities at $33 million. There's a lot of one-time money in that, as you might imagine. We can take some savings from a prior year and spend it on facilities because it's a one-time cost, one-time revenue. So a big chunk of that is, that kind of savings category. But again, same types of priorities, and you see transfer to school at $18 million, though effectively that increase is actually closer to 28 or 29 because this past summer the boards came together, they paid off the supplemental retirement liability that the school division had, which has been a joint priority for a number of years. Both boards came together with some savings on the county side. We were able to get that off of the books, which is a really big deal, really big day. And so that created $10 million of expense capacity. So there's $18 million of new revenue dollars and $10 million of new expense capacity dollars on the school side. That's a $28 million investment effectively from the Board of Supervisors into the school division. That's the largest by far, nowhere close in terms of investment in the school system as part of this budget. Employee compensation, again, I won't go into all these pieces and parts, but we are taking a multi-piece, multi-year plan to try to shore up our workforce. We have a lot of facilities, we have some capital, we have police cars and fire trucks, but at the end of the day, local government, whether it's school division or whether it's general government, we're a people business and we have to invest in that area first and foremost. I think the easiest statistic here to wrap your mind around is the fact that our starting pay for our firefighters, we're 17% behind the market, or we were in October. That's probably going to get a little bit worse by the time the board finishes with this budget, so we are trying to figure out where to triangulate and land in terms of our new starting salary for firefighters. But you can imagine over time, the impact something like that would happen. And we're also behind in police, also behind the sheriff. We made good strides last year, county and schools, but the market moved. I mean, it was a very tumultuous year in terms of the labor market. The new standard basically has become $15. We have a lot of positions that aren't even at the $12 mark. Some of our custodians, a lot of our, frontline people. So this budget on the county side is looking at a 2-year plan to increase that ultimately to $16. We're competing with a lot of folks now that we weren't normally competing against. I mean, everybody understands. If you go out to eat, you understand the labor market shortages that we're facing. I was just with the economic development director today, and he said the last county he had, there's 7,000 job postings just in Chesterfield County the last time that he took that measure. So. And we have, particularly on the general government side, but also on the school division side, we're competing in a lot of those same categories, so we have to invest in the workforce. That's why you saw that largest block on the previous slide. There are some enhancements to existing service lines, but this is a very small number in the grand scheme of things compared to what we would normally do. You see $7.6 million. And so what I'm talking about here is where we have a program or service and where we are going to suggest to the board that it needs additional investment to increase that service level. But roughly a third of that number is going just into paying contract costs that have gone up. So just a bare minimum of maintaining a service level, CPI at 6, 7, 8%, depending on how you want to measure it, is a very, very large number, and we have a lot of contracts that are tied to that. We have to pay those monies. A best example of this is in the fire department. Again, making sure that we're being mindful of what's needed there. We have a minimum staffing level in the county. Every single day, we have to have a certain number of folks. If I don't have in my county department, if I've got 5 people that are out for vacation or whatever, we can power through that for a few days. In the fire department, you can't do that. You can't just say, well, we're not going to run that truck or that ambulance, or we're not going to answer those calls. They have a minimum staffing they have to hit every single day in order to answer the calls that come from this community. And so we have to invest back into that division so that they can hit that minimum staffing number. We're seeing overtime costs and sort of forced overtime where folks are required to come back and work. Those are going up significantly. And so there are 12 positions in this budget to go right into the fire department to make sure we can hit those minimum staffing targets every day. So that's a good example of what I'm talking about on this slide. We can go into other examples if there's other questions. That being said, we recognize trying to find that, like I said, we always talk about that balance between being mindful of the taxpayer and being mindful of the needs of the organization. I'm not going to go through all of this, but you can see there we get many, many, many requests that come in through a budget process from our departments, from the community, from board members, whomever, wherever they may originate from. We fund a small portion of those, and just because there's revenue that's possible, we have to, again, find that balance, be mindful of all the economic realities that the community is facing. So this is just a laundry list, just on the county side, of things that aren't funded as part of this plan. Another key thing, we've touched on this a little bit, there's a lot of uncertainty. This budget is built around making sure that if things get worse, the Fed hiked interest rates today. When we built our referendum, we have to build it in at a much higher interest rate. We do things like our merit adjustment, our annual merit adjustment, which is kind of that cost of living effectively on the county side. We push that back to February. If economic conditions don't hold up, if we can't do that, it gives us the ability to plan and sort of be very nimble as we move through the course of the year. So we try to build in as much flexibility in any budget, but this budget in particular, just because there are so many unknowns, but even before we get to July 1st. This is just, this is not an end-all, be-all, but we want to, again, be mindful of how is spending growing over time. This is real spending. So what I mean by that's inflation adjusted, and it's on a per capita basis. This is on the general government side. The orange dotted line represents FY09. That was sort of our previous high water mark before the Great Recession. And you see coming out of the Great Recession, spending was flat as can be. Took a little dip in 11 there with sort of the beginning of COVID, and you see it's come back up a little bit. But even with an overall a strong budget increase, we're still well below where we were in 09 and more or less in line with where we've been for the last 10 years or so. School division chart, similar pattern overall, not back to that 09 level. I think because of some investment from the state and some healthy investment from the locals, you've seen an upward trajectory of this investment on a per student basis. This is just local dollars. You see bottoms out there in 14, coming out of the Great Recession, and it's come up pretty steadily since that point. Speaking of the school division, and I know our school friends are aware of this, but the media in particular seems to glom on to the $18 million increase in the general fund support for the school division, and not recognizing all of the ways that the Board of Supervisors and school board work together to take care of the whole host of needs that the school division has. So it is the base transfer going up by $18 million. That's what comes from your local taxes. As I mentioned, it's an effective $28 million increase because of the expense capacity that's been created. But you see there, and I won't walk through all of these items, but whether it's giving the school division a large chunk of the federal dollars that have shown up during COVID and the subsequent years, paying for capital projects such as our enterprise resource planning platform, our financial computer system, The county is paying for that entire bill. We support schools in any number of ways, and I think that just kind of gets lost in the mix. The media tends to glom onto the $18 million, and we can go on. There's probably another page that I could put together for ways that we support the school division, but just wanted to point that out. It's not as simple as the $18 million. It's a much more nuanced relationship between the two boards, and it has worked well, particularly over the last several years. The referendum, like I mentioned, this is a ballot initiative that's scheduled for November of this year. We've been working on this for a couple of years, got a little bit of a slow start because of COVID. $540 million on the county side, 4 major categories: fire stations, police precincts, quality of life items such as parks and libraries. And then schools on the other side, schools at $375 million of the $540 million total. You're going to hear a lot more about this. I won't dwell on it tonight because we're going to be spending, you'll be back in here this summer, and we'll be anywhere that you sit down to have dinner, or civic club or church group. We're going to try to be in there and educate folks on this. 540 is a big number. It's the largest referendum we've ever had. The good news is, because of the way that we sell and manage and structure our debt, this does not require an additional funding source to execute this referendum. We pay debt off very, very aggressively. So as those tranches come off every single year, we can essentially replace them with new bonds and keep that debt service curve very level over time. That doesn't take away from operational items in the classroom or on the front lines for a public safety agency, but we can be attentive to what are some pretty significant facility needs throughout the community. Referendum timeline, again, the board will approve this plan. We actually have to petition the court to put it on the ballot, and then probably late summer into early fall, we'll be out in the community really selling all the projects in here, answering questions, and going through that whole piece. If you've lived in Chesterfield for a while, you remember this process. We did it last in 2013. Utility rates, we have to be mindful. There's any number of ways that you interact with Chesterfield County. You see here about less than a 3% increase in our proposed overall bi-monthly utility bill in Chesterfield County, and you see how we compare against our surrounding localities. So tax rate, that real estate tax rate, again, the simplistic nature of the media, unfortunately, they tend to glom onto that top line, that largest font. But when you put it all into the mixing bowl, at the end of the day, it all hits your checkbook. It all hits your bottom line, and we're attentive to every single portion of that. So an increase in utility, but below the rate of inflation and far beyond what are our peer rates throughout the region. With that being said, just a little reminder of where we are. We're in the middle of that community meeting calendar. We have 2 more, Monday, Tuesday night, and then the public hearing is March 23rd. There's plenty of time to get in touch with your board member or ask questions of staff. And we've got a lot of good budget staff here in the room tonight to answer questions. And then Blueprint at Chesterfield.gov, that is up 365 days a year. If you have a question, comment, you don't want to call or come out to meeting, can't do it, please email us. We do respond to that usually within 24 hours. With that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Good evening. Jim, Joe, Matt. A lot of people don't know Joe and I are actually neighbors, so we see each other regularly on our walks. It's a treat for both of us, I think.
We could have driven here tonight.
Yeah. Maybe we'll drive back together. Yeah. Ben Pearson Nelson. I'm president of the Chesterfield County Council of Parent-Teacher Associations. I'm here on behalf of that organization. We have about 8,000 members in Chesterfield County right now. As part of our effort, you'll notice there's not a lot of citizens in here tonight. A lot of our parents and teachers are working and have kids, and so it's very difficult for them to come to public meetings, unfortunately. However, on your behalf, we did create a petition to fully fund schools that we're having folks sign who are interested in that. And I have 48 signatures from Bermuda for you, from citizens, that I will email you after the meeting to help support that cause. We did vote, our organization voted to fully support the superintendent's budget, the needs-based budget. I think it's incredibly important to point out this is a needs-based budget. This is a budget that keeps schools alive, right? It keeps the lights on. It doesn't enhance the kind of learning that we're looking for in terms of your parent or your teacher. And so we did vote to support it because we want to make sure our schools are getting the funding they need. But having said that, you know, I'm continually embarrassed that our children are in last place for school funding. If you compare Chesterfield County to any other similar district in Virginia, we're in last place. And that's been as long as I've advocated for kids, so I might not be doing a very good job. I'm trying to move that marker. I don't want to be, and parents don't want to be in last place. We don't want our kids in last place. I looked at recent census data, and it turns out that we're now behind the state of Alabama for per capita funding of our students. And to me, that's a terrible fact. We're just ahead of Mississippi, the poorest state in the United States. And our median income is 3 times those states. So that's not good. That's not a bragging point at all. And so I think we need to keep that in mind. And I'm here to tell you, like, our schools are in trouble. Like, I'm in schools every day talking to teachers, talking to principals, and I encourage you to do that. If you're not doing that, please reach out to your principals. Please reach out to your teachers. We're bleeding teachers. Like, we're 200 teachers short right now. And I know that, you know, we talked about it's a problem across the country, right? But we're competing directly with Henrico. I mean, we're competing directly with other localities. Virginia doesn't produce enough teachers to fill our vacancies. Like, the 4 largest divisions would take every single graduate from Virginia. And so we don't have enough teachers, so we need to really focus on retention and recruitment. I also want to point out that the people of Chesterfield do want to fund schools. I know you guys remember the last time we did this, we got 8,000 signatures of people who wanted to fully fund schools. You remember that? That's 8,000 citizens. And we have over 500 signatures now. That's a lot of people who want to fund schools. And I think we need to move past this sort of notion that people who don't have kids in schools don't care about schools. Because I've asked them, and a lot of them are grandparents, a lot of them are retired teachers, a lot of them want their property values to stay high, and that's all dependent upon schools. All of us shop schools first when we shop real estate. So we have to keep our schools funded. So what I'd like to ask is that you advocate for us. You advocate for our children, you advocate for our teachers, you advocate for our principals, and thank you for having this forum. I mean, this public feedback, I think I'm very appreciative you guys are open. I've met with all of you. You're all willing to talk, and I really appreciate that. It's an important part of the democratic process, and I'm glad you're doing that. But I do want to make sure that we keep focused. And I would love to see another survey of the community. The last survey we did of the community in terms of what people want funded was some years ago. And I think you'll find that the emphasis on defunding schools is much less than people think. We all want strong public schools. We all want our teachers. And we're going to need a significant, just like for firefighters or police officers or sheriff's deputies, we need a significant increase beyond a needs-based budget. So I just please keep that in mind. Thank you for having this forum. I appreciate it. And it's good to see you on. Joe, I'll see you in the walk.
Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm Christine Melendez. We've met in the past. I am currently the president of the Chesterfield Education Association. Before I share a couple of data points, Mr. Harris, I just had a question just to clarify. So on one of the slides, it said that there's a $35.6 million investment in the workforce. And then also on another portion, it says the $28.8 million transfer to schools. Which category does the investment in school workforce fall under in that breakdown?
The school and workforce would be in the school transfer.
Okay.
The other one. And so they have a similar package on their side. Obviously, they, 50-50 relationship with the state.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for clarifying that. And so I wanted to share a couple of data points that I got from the Virginia Department of Education's 2020-2021 Teacher Salary Survey. It was published in January of 2022, so it is fairly recent data. For teacher salary, in comparison, I compared Chesterfield, Henrico, and Virginia. I pulled the data from that survey. Budgeted for fiscal year 2022, Chesterfield is at an average of $52,307. Henrico is at $56,190, and the Virginia state average for teachers' salary is $62,101. And so ultimately what that means is that budgeted for this year, already we're at $4,000 less than Henrico and almost $10,000 less than the state average. On top of that, if we look at our assistant principal salaries, which we know that our assistant principals are instrumental in supporting our instructional staff. Basically, we are at $2,000 more than Henrico at an average, which is exciting, but we are still over $13,000 less than the state average for the salary of an assistant principal. And then ultimately, if you're a principal in Chesterfield, you're looking pretty good. So I won't bring that average up, but if you want to look it up later, feel free to Google that Virginia Department of Education teacher salary survey. Another point that I want to highlight is that the starting teacher salaries for this school year, 2021 and 2022, in Chesterfield, if you hold a bachelor's degree, you earn $46,000. In Henrico, it's $48,033. For a master's degree in Chesterfield, it's $48,760. In Henrico, it's $50,000. And so there is a significant gap in the starting teacher salary, and we know that it's difficult to recruit teachers from colleges or who are career switchers, as you heard from Dr. Pearson Nelson. And then finally, I did want to also highlight the averages within the Bermuda district. So the lowest average teacher salary in the Bermuda district belongs to Bellwood Elementary. The teachers at that school make an average of $49,609. The highest average in the Bermuda district belongs to the teachers at Elizabeth Davis Middle School. They earn an average of $53,024. And so all of this information, as I said, is available to you in the Virginia Department of Ed Teacher Salary Survey Report. And I just finally want to finish with the fact that in an email that was sent from the county's Constituent Services Liaison, it says, and I quote, "The Board of Supervisors prioritizes education. However, they must strike a balance of serving students and teachers with the needs of other citizens, including our county's elderly and disabled populations." And I would like to challenge that with the question of who are those people that are being trained up and delivering the services to meet the needs of other citizens, including the county's elderly and disabled population. If we don't take an investment in our educational system seriously, every other part of our county's government is going to feel the effect very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Barb Seitz. I am one of the senior citizens that they're talking about. And I have a husband who's disabled. He was going to come tonight. He's very difficult to get in and out of the car and in and out of a forum like this. But he also, and I, and our peer group, we belong to a group called Lifelong Learning, where we have been interacting on Zoom for our classes for the elderly. As we've spoken to these people, they're friends of ours, they are retired teachers. They are people that have worked in this community. They're telling me, and I'm sharing with you, please fully fund our schools. While Virginia is one of the wealthiest states, we do rank very low in funding schools, which is really sorry to me. I have 5 kids, 11 grandkids. I want the schools to be fully funded because that's our future. That's my future. That's your future. Over the last couple of decades, I know that Chesterfield schools have become increasingly diverse. We're seeing more disabled kids. We're seeing a higher increase of low-income families and English as second language. So my neighbor is Claudia Livesey. She is an English second language teacher. She was going to come tonight, couldn't. She's got a couple kids that she's running around. She's also said to me, we need more funding for teacher support, more funding for English second language, and more funding for the kids who are really falling behind in reading and math. Let's see, do I have anything else I want to include? No, I'm just going to say, please consider fully funding our schools. We need your support. You need our support. We old folks, we do support schools. And by the way, we do support a lot of other things too. So please consider fully funding our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take just a minute to talk about schools. As the first three speakers have spoken on schools, and I'm sure that there's some more speakers in the audience, we definitely recognize that schools are a part of quality of life in Chesterfield County and that they are important to all of our citizens. Although it is true that our families in the county that have school-age students has dropped to about 27.3% of the county from a high of about 33%. That being said, it has been said tonight, and I agree, that good schools does affect property values and it does affect everybody in the county. We've worked really hard as a Board of Supervisors with the current school board to address issues. And somehow over the years, we've found that somehow this has become Chesterfield County Schools versus the Chesterfield County Board of Supervisors or the general funds budget in conflict with how we fund schools. But I've spent a lot of time with Ann, and I'm on the school liaison committee. What I could tell you that's not talked about a lot is that this battle shouldn't be between schools and the county. This battle should be the schools in the county fighting the state. The state sets the ratio of teachers in the classroom. The county funds over almost 600 additional teachers, 100% of their salary above what the state compensates. There's almost 1,000 total school employees, including those teachers, that are not funded by the state. $0 coming in from the state. If we were able to get the state to bring in ratios that were more in line with where we need to have in the classroom, and we could end the unfunded mandates that the state puts on the school system, where they require them to do many things that cost millions of dollars. There's at least a $10 to $15 million, I believe as much as $20 million more a year that should go to schools from the state. And that would more than close the gap that the schools have this year. We've worked very hard with the school board, and I appreciate Ann and her colleagues' help with this to lobby the state to bring this issue to the state and place it at the feet of the people that actually caused the problem. And I ask y'all that want to fully fund schools to help us to lobby the state to get the state to do their part so that we can fully fund our schools. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Harris, Mr. Ingle, Dr. Casey. My name is Fred DeMay. I'm from the Matoka District. A couple questions and then some comments. Going over the budget documents, it looks like we're combined budget this year of about $1.8 billion between county and schools. And I believe that's about a 10%, maybe a 10.2% increase over last year. Traditionally, Chesterfield budgets are running about 2 to a little bit more times the rate of inflation. And last year, now we're seeing huge increases in inflation right now, but last year the annualized inflation rate was 4.7%. So a budget running at about 10 to 10.2 is again about 2 times the rate of inflation. I've made several comments that that's a little heady in that maybe we ought to try and push those numbers back towards the rate of inflation. However, this year we have a slightly different situation. In fact, we have a major league different situation. We're seeing inflation now running at 8%. And I've been addressing the Board of Supervisors for about 18 years. I've been in with the school boards about the same amount of time. Unfortunately, last year I had missed, and the year before because of the COVID situation. But I have seen now, by looking through your budget documents and everything, just one of the most aggressive tax reduction efforts in the history of the county. You mentioned that, Mr. Ingle, and you're exactly right. Mr. Harris, Dr. Casey, their staffs have done an excellent job of moving in here and reducing rates to the point that they're just about going to offset a lot of this inflation. And in addition to that, I've had issues for quite a while with the car registration tax being raised from $20 to $40. And I see that you're going to address that now with a 50% tax cut. Good job, gentlemen. Good job. Same goes for the car tax itself. My vehicles, usually vehicles don't go up, they go down. This year I was somewhat surprised, but not astonished because of what's been mentioned about the increase in vehicles costs. And I saw roughly about a 19.5% increase in what my car tax is going to be. The increase in the car tax relief to 55% gives me an 18.3% reduction. So we're looking at approximately a 1.2% increase. Again, good, very good, gentlemen, very good. What I wanted to address here is I hear some people talk here about teacher pay and how far we are behind and how low we are based on other states. But after examining many studies and surveys on teacher pay, it is unfortunate to note that the vast majority of studies are purposely built by special interest groups like the NEA, the National Education Association, the American Federation of Teachers, think tanks with agendas, and just plain political hacks. Okay? The true numbers on many of these studies the numbers refer to how state expenditures for teacher salaries are referenced to the national average. But the national average is heavily skewed by a few very high-paying states, thus distorting the curve. What you do is if you get rid of Hawaii, Massachusetts, New York, California, you see that we get into a much, much more even distribution. To this end, I would recommend that we start looking more at median teacher pay by state, because this marginalizes the high-paying outliers and brings reality better into perspective. The statewide salaries here in Virginia, at the very least, in comparison to other states, are in the top half. There's no study that, with any real credibility that shows that Virginia pay for teachers is below the top 25. And I have a couple of studies here that I referenced here. Now, it was difficult. It was difficult to find these. So what I did is I went to some large job online job sites, one of them being Indeed, one being ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter is referencing a lot of ADP numbers, and ADP, automatic data processing, is a huge processing operation for human resources and pay. And they ran the numbers. They do payroll for hundreds of school systems around the country. And in their study, Virginia ranks 15th out of 50 states. We've got another one here from Indeed, which again is a huge online pay and job site. And they referenced the top 25 states that pay teachers the most in 2022. In their study, Virginia ranks 12th out of 50 states. So, frankly, 12th and 15th, they're certainly not in the top 10, but they're certainly not in the bottom. In fact, these are in the top 30%. Now, I have a teacher in the family, and I had a fortunate time over the holiday to attend several gatherings with teachers. And in asking them, discussing with them things like, where the teacher pay is, why what would make you leave, this kind of thing. They cited a couple things. One is the compression issue. And I believe we're all familiar with that, and we know that that's a problem. Another issue that was cited is certain subject matter is a very big issue because you're having a very difficult time finding math teachers. Obviously, in this employment environment, and Mr. Harris had mentioned this, teachers coming out of school to teach math are being sucked up by industry at higher salaries, and that drastically reduces the number of teachers that could go into the profession for math, science, and some other ones. We also seem to be having a big problem with ESL teachers. But what really struck me, and this was truly interesting given all the lip service to teacher pay, is the number one reason that a lot of teachers have left the profession, and a lot of these people were getting on in years, but it wasn't only teachers that were moving into a retirement mode, was the horrible mismanagement and policy decisions being made by our school board and CCPS. And that really did strike me because that's not a monetary issue. That's a personnel and people issue. And I don't want to dwell on it, but we went through the masking issue where the school board totally disregarded the science on masking, and it caused a lot of consternation. The other big issue was going back and forth with the remote learning, in-person learning, bouncing around. People just, that just put people in a state of mental depression. In discussing this, and I just wanted to bring this forth on an issue, is that when I hear the majority of people I talk to, and it's not everybody, but the issue of poor policy decisions and poor policy statements and management was an extremely large portion of why these people left. And that's something that you can throw money at, but isn't going to get fixed with money. Do we need to be sure our teachers are paid well? Yes. Studies show that they're certainly not at the bottom. They're certainly nowhere near the bottom in state-by-state payments. But what really does concern me, and like I say, I'm just bringing this to your attention tonight because you're not the school board, is that the policies and the procedures are a big driver at pushing teachers out of the profession. And that certainly needs to change because no money that you could throw at the problem would solve that. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And again, you've done a great job combing this budget for areas where we can see some reductions. Mr. Ingle, I firmly would ask you to approve the budget as they had. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take a few online questions. Matt, would you like to take a couple of those?
Yeah, so just no particular order. And the first question is, can year-end surplus savings from the previous budget be used to close the gap that's been discussed here tonight in the school budget? And the answer is yes, to a certain degree. This proposal that is being discussed here tonight already has $15 million of such funds in it. And you really got to sort of manage that amount to something that you can repeat or something you can step down off of. So that's been a strategy that the school board and their staff have already deployed to help get to this place. I think going beyond that would be, not the best step because they have to figure out how they're going to work down off of that $15 million the next year. The middle question, how can the county provide necessary funding for all needs throughout the county and move forward in a sustainable and fiscally responsible way? Now, realistically, you can't. I think you saw on that slide that we put up just here, that we have a transportation list that's in the billions of dollars. Every budget's about making tough choices. We've left a lot of things on the cutting room floor. On the county side, we use a 5-year planning model to really be able to lay out the things that we want to do. And most everything we do, whether it's salaries or the minimum staffing plan we talked about, we do over the course of a number of years because we have to be sustainable. We have to be fiscally responsible. So I think it sounds good to be able to put all of the needs, and no one's really questioning whether it's need or want, but the economic realities of any budget, good year, bad year, you can't get them all in there and get anywhere close to something that's fiscally responsible. And then the last question that's up here, other than real estate taxes, what has contributed to the revenue growth? And we talked about that. It's vehicle values is the second largest component of that. And really the third thing for the general government side has been the sales tax. And I think COVID has, sort of an odd outgrowth of that. A lot of Chesterfield residents spending money closer to home, maybe a little bit more online activity. And so that has put a few more sales tax dollars in the budget as well as in the school budget. They get sales tax from the state, and overall, they've seen some increases there as well. So those are the three big categories.
We have anybody else in the audience wants to come?
Good evening. I'm Jerry Turner. I try to go to as many of these meetings as I can. Before Facebook, I had to physically go there. Now I can sit home and do it at home. And I missed Clover Hill, so they didn't get to see my face. But the Dale, and I'm lived in Dale District. And I brought this up then. And Matt, you and I have talked about this before. And I'm gonna bring it up every year until y'all change.
I know what you're going to say, and I got good news for you. You're talking about the North Carolina tax issue, sending the checks out of state?
Absolutely.
So the treasurer has heard you and many other residents, and we are bringing lockbox services back in-house.
Very good.
I'm not entirely sure if we're going to have it takes a lot of work and planning. So I don't know whether it'll be this year, but absolutely next year, with a decent chance we'll do that this year, that those lockbox services will happen right here in Chesterfield County.
Very good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yes, sir.
But there again, your staff is doing a very good job with Facebook. It gives everybody a chance to see what is happening without having to physically come down here and see that. That's a good thing for the county. The other thing that I got to say is, yeah, there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of wants, but to cut the tax rate to make everybody feel good is not the thing to do. And I know y'all have a tough job trying to balance the budget, who needs to pay what and how much. But there again, there's a lot of people out there, a lot of, I guess, agencies within in the county that need additional funding, and cutting the budget just to make people feel good is not the way to do that. But thank you for your time.
Mr. Harris, Mr. Ingle, Dr. Casey, thank you for your service to Chesterfield. I am Amanda Moody. I'm a retired CCPS teacher of 22 years, a resident of the Bermuda District, and currently I serve on the Chesterfield County Public Schools Environmental Stewardship Advisory Committee. And as some of the speakers before me, I am also here to encourage the board to approve the CCPS operating budget as requested, so that our schools can effectively serve our growing population of students. It is our advisory committee's opinion that CCPS facility staff are being good stewards of county funds and are operating our facilities as optimally as possible with the current equipment and resources. Our instructional staff has done more with less for many years, especially through the challenges of the pandemic, and it's time to give our CCPS staff the tools they need to keep our county competitive and attracting residents and businesses. The quality of public education available to our children is the primary factor in keeping us competitive. And Mr. Ingle, as I'm sure the other speakers do, I do advocate with my state legislators on behalf of the schools, because I know that half the funding comes from that source. But I do encourage you to fully fund our school budget. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Ingle, Mr. Harris, and Dr. Casey. Phil Orr from Bermuda District, and I'm not here to talk about the school budget, but I do want to let you know that I fully support fully funded it. I'm a product of the Chesterfield County Schools, born and raised here all my life. I can't understand for $1.8 billion budget why you can't fully fund the school budget, so please take that in consideration. What I'm here to talk about is the additional tax burden that this budget places upon the citizens of Chesterfield. Matt, you responded to an email from me about the real estate tax increase. 95 cents would have added $71.2 million to the budget. Putting it at 92 adds 55.9. So if you look at that, that's about $56 million a year with a free, increase with a 3-cent reduction. 2 years ago, Chesterfield County joined 8 other localities in the Central Regional Transportation Authority to get more transportation dollars. It costs Chesterfield citizens approximately $57 million a year at 7.5 cents on a tax on a gallon of gas and 0.7% additional sales tax. Chesterfield only gets 50% of this money back directly for their unrestricted use. So that's additional taxes to the taxpayer. 57 million plus 56 million equals 113 million a year out of taxpayers' pockets. That's equivalent to 22.6 cents increase in the real estate tax rate, when 5 million equals 1 cent, as Mr. Harris made me aware. With the change in a proffer ordinance in 2016, developers are nearing a county budgeted level of only 1 million paid proffer dollars a year. With over 20,000 new rooftops approved in the last 2 years, the county could have collected up to 25 million a year under the proffer ordinance in effect in 2015. So citizens are now paying 113 million more a year in taxes to build required infrastructure from excessive development, while developers are approaching paying less than 1 million in proffers. Now the county is advocating a $540 million bond referendum to pay for new schools and other infrastructure needs required by excessive overdevelopment. Plus, there are some who now want a meals tax increase, all to be paid for by taxpayers, while developers stuff millions of profit dollars in their pockets, walk away free, and more each year to the BOS members' campaign funds. No longer will the citizens allow the BOS to continue to bleed all these funds from taxpayers while developers walk away free. We insist on lowering that tax rate, and a reasonable rate it could be 85 cents if you base it on what an equal budget would be from last year. And we require that impact fees be immediately imposed on developers to require them to pay their fair share of the new required infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Tracy Portillo. This is my first time coming to one of these meetings. It's kind of exciting. No one, I think, speaking today or who watched all those numbers come across the screen thinks this is an easy job. Like, we know this budget is complicated. There are a lot of people who are pulling at you, right, to make these decisions. But when we talk about funding schools, it is foundational. So I am a product of Chesterfield County Schools. Like, I grew up here in Chesterfield County, went to Monacan High School, go Chiefs, right? I've raised my son in Chesterfield County, and he is about to graduate from Manchester High School. And I have seen how the impact of the teachers have made an impact in my life and have made an impact in his life. I think everyone probably in this room could talk about the impact that a teacher or multiple teachers have made in their growth and development, their foundational growth and development that have made them into their character, the great character we have here. So my concern about not fully funding Chesterfield County schools is in the competition that we're in for good teachers. When we are hiring teachers at starting pay, $2,000, at $2,000 less than our competitive counties, right? They can drive 20 minutes across the river to make $2,000 more. That is the beginning of their career, right? And in the end, we know that we are losing high-quality teachers this year, sometimes under circumstances that we cannot control. I mean, who knew the pandemic was going to roll in and all these problems would happen, all the challenges we've all had. So, and we for sure will lose more over the summer. So it's about attracting the talent and then retaining the talent of good teachers in some of the most high-risk classrooms, right? I'm very concerned about the number of teachers we have lost this year and the high numbers that we are likely to lose this summer. The teaching profession is dominated by women. Outdated assumptions where the teachers could be paid less because their households likely had a male wage or a partnered wage that would sort of help hold that income. Teachers are still very much underpaid. Despite the fact that teachers are most likely our most highly educated workforce, they still earn tens of thousands of dollars less than those with non-teaching degrees. Thankfully, like over time, women have had the opportunity in lots of areas of employment to choose careers. But that only contributes to the ever-decreasing number of women who are going into teaching. As some of my colleagues have previously commented, our teaching training programs in Virginia are not keeping up with the demand. Virginia is not producing enough teachers to fulfill the open positions, and as a result, even trying to recruit out-of-state teachers for our open positions is futile. Starting salaries for a brand new teacher just graduating from college this year, $38,320 in Henrico. That number is slated to increase by 5% next year. Starting salary for a new teacher just graduating from college this year in Chesterfield is $46,000. We have to stop playing and planning like we're in the 1950s. Chesterfield needs to do more to recruit and retain teachers. I still want to attract and retain teachers that need to significantly increase our incentives for teachers to stay here. Otherwise, counties like Henrico are going to continue to pull great teachers that we have here. As a mom, as a business owner, as a Chesterfield resident, please consider how to fully fund Chesterfield County Schools. Thank you.
Hi, I'm her son. I'm Christopher. So I go to the tech center at the Courthouse Tech Center. So I do computer networking. I do a bunch of awesome stuff there that will help me in my career further on. And when I went there a year ago, I thought, oh, this will be interesting because I'm also doing a specialty center. So doing so much stuff at some time, it'll be awesome. So when I went there and I met this awesome teacher, his name was Mr. Steinrock. He was awesome. And so COVID happened. We didn't see that coming. And then he got forced into retirement. And then I didn't get to have the awesome experience to be with him, with the awesome teacher. And then this year happened. And it was all fine and dandy until I went to history class. And my teacher didn't show up the first day. And I had a sub, like a temp sub for the first 2 weeks. And the next 2 weeks, a different person. And then we have a more permanent sub now. After that, I hear all these different stories about a statistics teacher who didn't show up on the first day, and now they haven't really learned any statistics, like actual statistics, other than the basics and basic stuff. Today, there's a bunch of stuff that hasn't happened that I thought could be due to money. And because of last year, due to COVID and probably a bunch of other budget issues, I didn't look into that truly. I didn't get one of the certifications from the tech center that everyone else that has gone through the tech center had the chance to do. We didn't get the vouchers in time to actually take the certification, and that put a huge dampener on my resume and all of my friends' resumes in the same class. Fully funding the budget for education will probably help way more than how it has been in the past. I feel like it will help so much more than it has right now. Thank you.
Full disclosure, Scott Steinrock's in my Sunday school class, and I know he was a great teacher, and it was a big loss to the tech center.
Oh, yeah.
Just one more question that's come through on the Facebook. What is the projection for sports tourism? How's that affecting revenue? So it's hard to dial down exactly what's the sports tourism piece, but we have seen a significant injection of energy from our sports tourism efforts. It shows up for us in hotel taxes. That's the easiest place to see it. That's about a $5 million revenue. So I think, again, this is where everything is relative in terms of scale. So even if that, doubled and had 100% growth from year to year, it's really that real estate property tax, in the $300+ million range. That's where the real power, the muscle of the budget is. But we have seen some nice revenues here in terms of overall hotel activity. We lead the region. We're back to where we were prior to COVID. The other localities have not seen that, and it really is attributable to our sports tourism efforts.
Mr. Harris, if I could just add to that too, sports tourism or any type of tourism, a visitor to Chesterfield on day one who's coming here and has a good experience comes back a second time, sometimes comes back with business interests and needs, and I've seen and talked to people like that. Chesterfield is not necessarily a big font, if you will, on Google Maps, so when they are coming here and they're at River City Sportsplex or RVC or many of the host of facilities that we have, they are impressed with the people here, the businesses here, and the quality of life. And they start researching while they're sitting on the sidelines, possibly watching their child play. And again, it's a great conversation I've had with many people who start figuring out how they may want to create their business here or have a business interest here.
I would say also that our hotels in the county did let us know that they were expecting a bigger downturn in their vacancy rate through COVID, and they told us specifically that they didn't see that decline in the vacancy rate, much to do with the sports tourism as well as some of the contracting in the area that was able to stay in the hotels and keep those rates or keep those rooms full. So between the two of those things, but specifically the sports tourism, the hotels in our county have let us know how important that was to them surviving through COVID, where in other jurisdictions they didn't do as well, and many of those jurisdictions ended up losing hotels where we didn't. So.
Last online question looks like here. So as sports tourism follow-up, are they also, if they're staying in the county, are they also eating in restaurants? Would a meals tax be considered in the future? Yeah, it's certainly that. I think that's really the benefit from it. It's the hotel and then it's sort of that ancillary spending. It's harder to capture and know exactly what that is because it's just not a clear mechanism for the accounting associated with that. We can estimate it based on national stuff, but that's part of our economic development strategy is to add those wraparound services so that when they come here for a tournament, they don't have to go to another locality to find a hotel or a restaurant or whatever they might be looking for. In terms of the meals tax, there's no meals tax for what is being discussed here tonight.
Good evening. My name is Renee Eldred, and I've got a couple of different questions. I noticed in the utilities budget, there's money for repairs. It's actually a large chunk of it, but I'm kind of wondering, as I drive through my neighborhood and all the roads are going like this, and it's all following the sewer line, I'm thinking of the city and the problems that they have. And I'm wondering how you budget future needs so we don't ever get to the point. I mean, you go in the city and they literally got lines going down the road, because the sewers aren't good. So I'm just kind of wondering how you budget in money for the futures to keep it going. I got some more. You can either answer now or
Go one at a time, or do you want to?
It doesn't matter. You can. Some of them are just kind of comments, but I was also looking at the dog license revenue. You've got $40,000 in there for this year and $80,000 for next, and I'm kind of wondering where you get the $80,000, seeing as how you now have a permanent dog license. If you live in the county, you don't have to keep renewing it every year. That was just kind of stood out. Also, in the CIP, you've got $20.6 million in for 22 and $116.2 for the rest of the 5 years total. that money's coming from the newly created transportation monies that I know, I haven't been able to really keep up with it, but I know at one point in time, the governor was talking about nixing that tax for that. So I'm just kind of curious as to what these funds were in the CIP that they were going to be spent on, and if it does get nixed, what are you going to do with what you were getting ready to do? And,
We're going to go ahead and answer some of your
okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll bring out the old budget person in me, but Mr. Harris is here. First, public utilities, and we'd be glad to sit down with you or anybody. They go through a very comprehensive modeling exercise of all of their infrastructure, water and sewer, and that there's maintenance and repair on infrastructure. So again, you don't have breaks as much as other localities have. You don't have the issues. So there's a rehab nature for a water and sewer system, for which I think that repair line item is maybe where much of that is captured. That's not a capital investment because we're not extending lines or creating new infrastructure, but I think there's thousands of miles of underground infrastructure in the county, and I think it has, I'm gonna make a guess, but let's say it has a 40-year useful life. So what you do is you take the total cost of repair and rehab over 40 years, and you invest that in every year. Generally works out to about 2.5% of the asset value. It's a modeling exercise we use for the counties, and the schools have started to prescribe to that as well. So we all are one family with that. For dog licenses, my understanding is over this last year, COVID helped create this fervor, if you will, that every single person I know, I think, has adopted a dog, which is great. In fact, it's taken off some of the pressures of our animal shelter needs because it's like a house. An animal doesn't last long with us. And so, again, you are correct with the permanent dog license fee, but the volume of people who are wanting animals is unprecedented. So, again, if that volume were to wane, then we will adjust that revenue source accordingly. And you are right, the tax you're referring to, the Central Virginia Transportation Authority, the 0.7% sales tax and the wholesale fuels tax were the numbers that you referenced that are one-for-one restricted to be into road infrastructure needs. What you are hearing at the state level is the state fuels tax. That's another tax or another source that is not the CVTA tax. The state would have to amend that section of the code as it applies to the CVTA. Probably no different than what the Hampton Roads equivalent tax is or the Northern Virginia equivalent tax is of these authorities. So right now, all of those are in place. But if for whatever reasons they are adjusted and adjusted down, then we just turn the dial down on the road infrastructure that they otherwise would have funded.
That was my point, that you would have to turn down. But
Renee, just one more thing on utilities. First off, when I saw the investment into the Bermuda district for utilities, I was extremely excited until I realized that the reason for that is because we do routinely update our lines, and we have the oldest in our
Wow.
district. So that's why we have the most money going into infrastructure in our district, but it is part of the rates. So utilities, what they charge is enough to pay for the labor that they have to serve us and to pay for the facilities that serve us, and also to invest into repairs and maintenance for us. And that's why it's remarkable that, honestly, I'm probably get more excited about utilities than most other people because we do such a good job in Chesterfield at rates far lower than the jurisdictions around us, and we don't have those calls. And when we do, because we do have from time to time a break, it's usually
Yeah,
not
we have
because
one.
utilities failed. Most of the time, it's because somebody working in the road cuts the line.
yeah, we had
And,
one not too long ago.
When that happens, the thing that also is amazing to me is how fast our utilities department responds to the issue and gets the water back on if it even went off at all. And so utilities, you gave me a good opportunity to just brag on the utilities department. So thank you for that.
Well, you also realize, like, my neighborhood's going on 50, 60, 70 years, and I can recall in the last 35 they've only replaced one line on one road. So
It's coming, I promise you.
Yeah.
They have a good, there's one department I really trust on getting things done is utilities. Our public safety and our utilities are probably the only place that government responds almost immediately. Everything else, there's a lag in the response from government. So I think that is absolutely a bright point in the county.
I will say the last time that we had our water pressure just plummeted. It did not take them but hours to get it back up, so that was good. Also, you've got $250,000 in community revitalization, and then $150,000 next 4 years after that. Come on, guys. We need some revitalization in the county.
So, I mean, I think that's one particular line that you're pulling out.
Yeah, but I want that one up.
Well, but what I'm saying is that the suite of lines that go towards that end goal is, this budget has more than any budget ever before. The board has put in place, or is proposed to put in place, a district enhancement fund of $1.1 million per district that is really aimed at those kind of mid to small projects that aren't otherwise covered in the plan. Then we have some specific, we actually have, that kind of money could go towards, water, sewer extensions, any number of things. We've never had that funding source before. So I think the board has heard that request, and in the CIP, they have made that a priority.
Also was looking, the amount of money for Parks and Rec, I would have hoped would have been a little bit higher this year, seeing how during COVID, that's one of the places that everybody was actually able to utilize. And it's got a lot more people using parks than before.
And we agree. And so when we got our ARPA funds, which is one of the rounds of federal stimulus dollars, we invested beyond schools, got the largest part of it, but the second largest component of our ARPA plan was in parks and recreation.
Yeah.
And it was actually, Chesterfield County was named by Money Magazine as one of the top 50 places to live in America. And one of the things that they cited in making that determination was the amount of money we spend in parks from our ARPA plan. So it's, we agree with you. I think that's one of the things COVID showed us, but that's why it's hard to look at one particular slice, the ARPA, which doesn't show up in there. The board had to take that, in between budgets because of the federal timelines, really did, made an unprecedented amount of investment in our park system.
But that is one thing that, because they've now seen parks, they're going to want more and more and more. So you have a variety of places to go. And my last thing that I would like to ask for, I'm not sure whose budget it would come out of, but if you could put some postage in there to actually send everybody on Jefferson Davis Highway a letter that says the name has changed. I have actually seen people who have changed letterheads to say Emancipation Highway.
Once the state moves forward with changing the street signs so that we can finish that process, then that will happen. But until the state moves forward and changes the signs, it's no telling what Google is going to say the name of the road is, because they've changed it several times this year.
Google still says
and none of them
Emancipation.
are correct.
Yeah.
So hopefully we will see that take place in a relatively near future. And when the street signs are changed, that will go out. But until then, it's going to be confusing to people to have stationery that says Route 1 when that's not what the street signs say. So it's confusing time. The internet has not made it better.
No,
But
it hasn't.
we are working towards that, and that is what's holding it up, is the state changing the signs out. As soon as that's done, everybody's going to get notified.
Okay, and I have one last question. Everybody agrees that firemen, policemen, and teachers are not paid enough. So if you already know that going into it, why not keep a penny of real estate tax and divide it between those three? I mean, it's I'm not sure how much 1 cent creates. So,
We have, I mean, there's $13 million in this plan that comes back after we did the decompression last year that looks specifically at starting salary. We are just waiting to finalize what those numbers are, kind of seeing what every card everyone else is holding. And then on April 6th, we think between now and April 6th, we'll be able to reveal those final numbers. But we feel very confident with the resources that are in this plan at 92 cents that we're able to address that challenge.
If I could add to that too, again, ideally on April 6th, for the step-based plans of police, fire, sheriff, and teacher, you will see each and every step of each and every year of their career. Decompressed, that was a goal of last year's plan. So for the first time, we actually had, different years used to be on the same step. And there are people we compete with that may have a higher starting salary, but actually share, once they get in 7, 10 years, they stay on the same step for multiple years. So again, as Mr. Harris referenced, we're working with our school counterparts, we're working with our public safety leaders to have these step-based plans not only compete at the first step, because that's where you primarily recruit the new person, but again, to keep somebody for their entire career in a decompressed system. All of those positions would agree that having a compressed system where, again, the experienced person is making the same as the new person lends to morale issues and lends to people leaving to a decompressed system. Having said that, the rest of the civilian workforce, custodial, and everything else that we share positions with the schools and counties together, we call it the civilian workforce. That is part of this more extensive pay study that we're doing. All of those variables hopefully will be coming to fruition April 6th.
Alrighty, I think that's it.
This year, with the exception of just a few increase in costs, almost the whole increase in budget on both the county side and the school side is in compensation.
Yeah. And I just have to add one more time that, and Mr. Ingle referred to it, whatever we're adjusting our scales to be competitive, to recruit and retain, that the state is not putting any monies towards the scales that we're generating April 6th.
And the sad part, too, is that your increases are getting eaten up by the gas and the cars and the groceries and everything else, so.
And the same problem we have with the state not funding schools properly with proper ratios. They don't fund our Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, our Sheriff's Department, many other departments in the county that we are also fully funding extra positions because we believe that those positions are important to have, even though the state says we don't need them.
I saw the budget amount for salaries for sheriffs for the courts. It's like, geez, I had no idea you actually spent that much money on the sheriff's officers in the courts. So I agree. Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. Oh, I guess this is okay. I'm short. First of all, I just wanted to thank you. I want to thank Chesterfield County for funding ROAR through the CDBG grants for this past year. We are really appreciative of that, and we honor you for investing in the Route 1 corridor. I know that we've been in this room many, many times, and we've asked for a lot of things, and I do have one question which I may forget, and that is about the referendum, if there's any money for the park that is to be in the conservation area that goes from Falling Creek to Drury's Bluff. I was really hoping, we had been told a couple of years ago that that was going to be in the next referendum.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and do you know if the Falling Creek Linear Park is in there as well? That goes on both sides of Falling Creek.
The emphasis is on the conservation area and the development of the waterfront.
Okay, and just as an aside, I think the Falling Creek Park has been in the plans for over 25 years, so we would really like to see that be made a priority. And I understand some of that was washed out with Gaston, but we'd really like to see that become important to the county. To really, we think it'll have an impact on the area. So, but again, we really want to thank you for your investment in the area through ROAR. ROAR is a proactive grassroots nonprofit that was birthed in February of 2020. And as one of the hubs for revitalization along Route 1, we help connect, equip, and support individuals, families, businesses, and organizations. And we also initiate innovative, collaborative efforts to help build healthy and flourishing community. I will just bring this up, that current statistics show that homes in our area are about half the size and twice the age of homes in the rest of the county. And half of our residents live in either apartments or mobile homes. And these are some statistics that Jimmy Bowling gave me. And as a region, we have significantly less education, make about half as much money, and are experiencing twice the poverty rate of the rest of the county. So your investment in our area is beginning to help bring about some positive change, and we truly are thankful. And here's some of the things that your CDBG dollars are doing through ROAR. Because of your investment in us, we're able to reach out to struggling families, provide financial training to promote stability and self-sufficiency. Because of you, we're able to host a listening and training event specifically for Route 1 businesses. That's going to be in May. Thanks to you, we're able to spearhead a crime prevention coalition that includes Chesterfield County Police, local churches, and the neighborhoods that surround them. And because of your funding, we're able to plan a storefront beautification program based on America in Bloom that we hope to kick off in the spring of next year. And we believe this beautification effort will bring life, color, and increased business to some of the storefronts along Route 1, and it will also bring an infusion of hope and dignity to the community at large. So thank you for investing in Route 1 community through funding our grant this year. At the moment, there are no monies set aside, as far as we're aware of, for next fiscal year for ROAR's project. And that would mean that our CDBG funding will end at the end of June. We hope that funding nonprofits that started or are located in Chesterfield will become a priority for Chesterfield's use of their CDBG funds, and that especially place-based organizations that grow out of the efforts of concerned citizens in struggling areas will be a priority. And we hope that you'll choose to continue to build upon the investment that you've already made in our area by funding ROAR's Community Empowerment Project, and that will continue in 22-23. Regardless, we're truly grateful for all that you've done, and we look forward to continuing our partnership with the county in the coming days. There's a lot more work to be done, we all know that, and we think that the county and ROAR make a pretty good team. So we thank you, and we look forward to continuing to work with you for the good of the community.
Ms. Marwell, I just want to say thank you for, you created, ROAR and built it. And, one of the things I like to get with you and not have the conversation here, but I do think that while the CDBG, the federal government programs, was an impetus to start, your organization up, I think we all realize the forms and processes of the federal government, which we have to follow, you have to follow. They're not as designed well for a startup entity that's in the fundraising mode. And I'd like to talk to you more about another manner outside of all the federal bureaucracy for what you do as a cause. And again, I think you've done a nice public service message here. So if anyone were to Google your organization, they'll see everything that you do. And I personally believe in what you do.
Thank you. That means a lot. And yes, federal regulations are not fun for anybody. For the department that has to deal with that, and for people in the community. And it is called Community Development Block Grant. So, the idea seems to be at some point it was for developing the community in areas that needed to be worked on. So we appreciate that. We appreciate all the work that's gone in, and we've certainly worked really hard on our end. And it has been a challenging time during the pandemic to raise money. I don't recommend birthing a nonprofit in the middle of a pandemic. But we're happy to be here. We're excited about what's happening. We're on track to meet our goals. We're trying to color within the lines, and we appreciate you. So thanks.
Good evening again. I was just going to remind, we've hit our allotted time, but we do notice we have two more questions that have come in before the 8 o'clock hour through our Facebook. I'd recommend we address those. We thank everybody for tuning in tonight and being here in person. And I am certain that Mr. Harris, Mr. Ingle, and Dr. Case will be happy to hang out for a few minutes if anyone else in the audience has some more questions after we shut down the virtual portion of the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. I'll run through the last two questions real quick. The first one in regards to the impact that companies like Carvana can have in terms of the budget. And I think the importance there, we touched on a couple times tonight, is provide balance in the overall tax base so that it's not all residential. So that when assessments go up on homes, we have a little bit more leeway to balance out that tax burden. So the more commercial that we can get coming in provides different kinds of dollars, and that ultimately helps us build better budgets moving forward, and hence the board's focus on economic development. The second one revolves around question about instructional vacancies and how to draw in new teachers, and how does this budget play into that. And I think that, that's a question that will be resolved here over the next couple weeks as we balance this school budget. Certainly there are a lot of dollars going back into teacher raises, not to go above and beyond what the governor has put in place. I think the original proposal was on average closer to 10% for teachers. We'll have to figure out, again, what the state budget ultimately can provide, and then if there have to be other choices made. But that will be something that the school board will have to wrestle with. Where are those monies invested? Because they also have a non-instructional portion of their pay plan that could be pushed off into a second year, or that could be, reduced somewhat. The county, we would like to do more for our non-public safety folks, but we are going to do that over a 2-year period because we just don't feel like we can get it all done in 1 year. So the reality is, if the emphasis needs to be on teachers, they have the ability to do that within this plan and push off some other priorities to another year.
I want to thank everybody that's participated online and those that are in the audience. We always look forward to engaging with citizens. I know I do, especially. Thank you again for coming out tonight. We do have 2 more of these meetings, and as you can tell, there are a few people here that aren't from the Bermuda district, and we welcome you to this meeting as well. If you weren't able to make it to one of the first 3, we do have 2 more, March 21st for the Midlothian district and March 22nd for the Matoka district. And again, there is no checking papers at the door for which district you're in or online. So you're able to come in and participate in those as well. Then we will have our public hearing on March 23rd, and we will move to adopt our budget on April 6th. And I am more than willing to stay and talk to people afterwards. So thank you again for coming.